So this is Dimitrios Kafteranis. He is a PhD candidate at the University of Luxembourg, and his presentation title for today is Discovering and Understanding the Whistleblower. Dimitrios Kafteranis is a PhD candidate at the University of Luxembourg, working on the legal protection of whistleblowers in the EU banking and financial sector. Dimitrios studied English language and literature at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece, and he has completed a Master in European and International Studies at the University of Macedonia, also in Greece. He graduated with an LLM in European Economic and Financial Criminal Law from the University of Luxembourg in 2016. Prior to joining his PhD program, Dimitrios was a trainee and assistant of Judge Villaras at the CJEU. During his PhD research, Dimitrios was an academic visitor at Trinity College Dublin, University of Antwerp, and Commercial Law Centre at the University of Oxford. Looking forward to learn more about whistleblowers.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Today, after 3 years and a half researching the protection of whistleblowers, I think it's nice, people outside the legal arena to be able to understand who is and what is a whistleblower, what is whistleblowing. So just an outline of the presentation. I will introduce you, and then I have 4 pillars. So I will discuss who is the whistleblower, what to report, where to report, and how can he or she be protected. I think most of you are familiar with these scandals, and the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Of course, the most recent one, FinCEN scandal, which is making headlines. I'm still trying to understand and go deeper into that, but it's also a very important one. So we understand that the issue of whistleblowing becomes more and more topical, and there is a strong interest now from the legal science to understand the status of the whistleblower and what should be the protection of this person. Just an overview is that at the international level, we have some efforts, but not a convention. The European Union has about a year ago adopted a directive on the protection of whistleblowers. And going to national level, we can see that it's very fragmented. We have countries with very good legislation. We have countries with no legislation. Just for my presentation, as I'm analyzing the European Union directive, I will take examples mostly from the directive just to highlight the data I'm giving here. So the big question, who is the whistleblower? So the whistleblower should be a worker. That's what the directive says, and many different legislations that I have studied. So the person who reports should have a working relationship with the person who is reporting about. Then when we go into deeper analysis, the term worker can have a wide meaning or a very narrow meaning. For instance, the directive has taken a very wide meaning of the term worker, and it means it entails former, current workers, trainees, volunteers, contractors and subcontractors, persons in the hiring process, and even significantly third persons connected with the worker, meaning his family, friends, or someone who is influenced from his reporting. A distinction that is made often is public or private sector. The directive, for instance, says public and private sector, and most of the European countries having a legislation, it applies to both sectors. Going to the journalists, because I think there is a misconception here. Most of the times, the journalist is not a whistleblower himself or herself. Most of the time, the journalist is taking the information he or she needs from a whistleblower. So as the directive says, the whistleblower is an important source for investigative journalists. It protects democracy. It protects the watchdog role of journalists. So sometimes we're confusing the term, what the journalist is doing and what the whistleblower is doing, which is for me a bit different. Both of them, they have very, very important roles, but a journalist is not always a whistleblower. Going now to what to report. Most of the legislations and also the European Union directive says wrongdoings. So wrongdoings can be illegalities, irregularities, something that is against the law. Every law has specific points on which the whistleblower should make reports. There is a big question if something which is immoral can be reported. The directive, for instance, is a bit vague on this issue. It talks about, let's say, immoral corporate tax policies. Not really immoral, it uses another word, but immoral things, I'm not really certain that they can be reported from the whistleblower. The directive, as many other legislations, they talk about actual or potential infringement. So the whistleblower can also report something that is about to come or that he thinks it's about to come. A big distinction we always make is that if legislation is sectoral, meaning that it concerns only a specific sector, like for instance the market abuse directive in the European Union, the whistleblower will be protected only if you report market abuse. What the directive does to a certain extent is that it covers many different breaches of EU law. And this is actually what I believe is the correct approach, that we have a, let's say, cut-up-all approach. So a law that covers every possible breach, because that's clearer and less complicated for the whistleblower when we have a law, a horizontal piece of legislation. We require the whistleblower to have reasonable grounds, so to believe that the facts are true. So, but for instance, the European Court of Human Rights demands authenticity of the information, so that there is a big contrast. I didn't entail it here, but one of the characteristics is the good faith. So should he report in good faith or not? For instance, the directive does not demand that. The Strasbourg court is demanding that. But to sum up, to take the general feeling is that it should be something, a wrongdoing, something against the law. Where to report? So we have the three-tier model, as we call it in the literature. First, report internally to the workplace. Second, report to the authorities. Public disclosure, meaning give the information to the public or to the media. Depending on the legislation, but it is very common, they force the whistleblower to report internally at first and then to the authorities and to the public. An innovation approach coming from the directive is that the whistleblower has the liberty to report either internally or to the authorities without any prior, without being obliged to go internally at first. Public disclosure is, to my knowledge, always the last option. So we don't really want to give the information to the public directly. We want to try to solve the problem internally, then to give it to the relevant authorities, and then to the public. Public disclosure can be the first choice, but the conditions are very strict. And for instance, in the directive, they are very vague. It states that if there is an imminent danger, it's something relevant, which is not really, we cannot really understand what is an imminent danger. Protection. I think the most important part is the protection, but because putting yourself to the shoes of a whistleblower, if you go to report, I think most of us, including myself, we will be afraid of what will happen next. Data, for instance, are not very positive on this side because most of the whistleblowers they are losing their job, they are blacklisted, they are destroyed financially also. So the directive, also legislations in EU countries, they provide labor law protection, anti-retaliation protection. So it can be, for instance, you take 5 years of salaries or 1 year of salaries, there is some kind of compensation. Rate degradation, it's not really always an option. Then the whistleblower risks also to be criminally, administratively, or civil liable for something. So for instance, you can be, if you're a whistleblower, you can be accused of theft, of breaching secrecies. So depending on the legislation, they try to create some kind of irresponsibility, but this is also something to be seen. I will just go, because I don't have a lot of time, to anonymity in financial rewards. I think anonymity is one of the most important components of whistleblower protection, because if you stay anonymous, no one will know, and the authorities or internally, they will do their job. And financial rewards, that's a big issue. The United States, they are using them, and they have a lot of success until now. Europe is still very against that, reminding very old historical times where someone was paid to collaborate with the government, for instance, like the Nazi regime. So these 2 points are really controversial, and they're very well used in the United States, not in Europe. Just 20 seconds to finish, we can see more and more laws coming. Regarding the European Union that I'm working on, the directive is a very important piece of legislation. It's something new. We never had that before. And just a final comment, the most important is that I see a change of view, a more positive view for the whistleblowers from the public. And I think that's very, very important. Thank you so much.